We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years, approximately 86 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a 3rd grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Well, I mean, I haven't spoken on this by chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is that not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America. Such systemic racism that has plagued our nation for far, far too long. I said that over the course of the past year that the blinders have been taken off the nation of the American people. But what many Americans didn't see or had simply refused to see couldn't be ignored any longer. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people around all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten. And it's not white Americans' fault, but just a fact.
The very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white presence from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we're coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. If you believe in this number as I do and would like to join me in the fight for reparations, please email me at friendsofadostv@gmail.com. That's friendsofadostv@gmail.com.
Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the central. Good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Reparationist Perspective, bringing you those ADOC's hot topics and making the case for reparations. making the case for weaponizing our vote and socializing our suffering. And today, family, it is the Ida B. Wells series presents Anti-Black Racism, the Chauvin Trial, Day 13, and updates on the lieutenant who was maced by the race soldiers, one of whom was fired, and the young 20-year-old brother, Mr. Dante Wright, who was executed by the race soldier. We've got some updates on those. What's up, Brian C. Johnson? Lord, I'm so glad somebody got the message out to you to join me over here. Marky Mark, I see you, family. YBOC info. Y'all, Racebook is trying to shut your sister down. They don't want me telling the TR group. They don't want me telling it TI is. You understand what I'm telling you? They are trying to silence me, you see. They are trying to COINTELPRO me. They are violating my First Amendment rights to speak to my audience. And so I thank you for those of you who got the message. I've asked a few of my soldiers before they cut down my Facebook Instant Messenger. I asked them to get the word out to let you guys know that I've been shut down. I can't even instant messenger you guys. Can't do anything over in Racebook. Hold on. Yeah, can't do anything. They didn't tell me what for. They didn't tell me how long. So this is when I need all hands on deck to get the word out to everyone about the show. Because without you guys sharing what's going on to me and other advocates like myself in the Racebook space, we can't get the information to the ADOCs and allies who need it. There was no reason for them to come for me. But now they come for me without an explanation, y'all. It's getting real hectic for your sister over on Racebook. So please, I am using this as an opportunity to wean myself off of Racebook. Folks have been telling me for a while to just leap, knowing the net will appear over here in YouTube. And I think that this is the time I'm going to do it. I don't even know how long I'm going to be down in Racebook. Brian says, Facebook is good for that random foolishness, ban and restrict you without notice. That's absolutely what they did. So I can't broadcast live over there. And I'm using it as an opportunity to just go ahead, leap. I build myself on Racebook. And so I'm kind of codependent in that way. And it's time for me to let it go because I am so sick and tired of being practically at showtime and they, put me in Racebook jail without explanation, telling me the account is under review, all kind of manner of things. So I want to be independent of Racebook, and I guess this is God's way of saying, now is the time. Trust me on YouTube to build your following. So that's what I'm going to do. YouTube doesn't, censor me as tight and as tough as Racebook does. So this is my opportunity to go independent of them. And I will be starting a Patreon channel because there are things that I can't even talk about over on YouTube. I want to be able to talk about, if you know Pig Latin, Ovid K. And I want to talk about the A-gay. Oh, Pig Latin don't work on that word. I want to talk about things about this interracial commercial thing that's happening in the mainstream media space. I want to talk about the Augie agenda, all these ways in which the government and the mainstream corporate media with 3 Ks is trying to compromise and neutralize us as a people, us economically, and our vote. And I need to be able to speak freely. So I'm going to be setting up the Patreon. And prayerfully, you guys will follow along and really help support me in, Hold on one second, guys. It's telling me about YouTube. I don't care about that. I'm not doing anything with it. I'm sorry that it's giving me notices about Facebook and not being able to broadcast live. I already know this, Facebook. You already told me that you shut me down. So now it wants to keep notifying me over in my StreamYard app. But anywho, um, Brian says you should start broadcasting on the HAPS app. Still in beta, but helps broadcast across all platforms. Well, if Facebook shuts me down, I don't think even HAPS can help me, but I will check it out. Thank you so much. My goal is to be on Patreon, where I have monthly subscribers supporting my voice so I can be free to produce my 10 shows unencumbered. I can say it like I see it. I can finally be free, and I can make a full-time living of being the voice for the reparationist movement and advocating for our special specific needs. That's my goal. Preferably you'll follow along, but that's coming too. So I'm pretty much done with Racebook, and this was my wake-up call to be done with them. So I'm thrilled. You know how it is, guys. Sometimes God just has to remove a thing from you. We don't always take our cues from that inner Christ, that inner Buddha, that inner Allah. We don't always listen to that when it tells us to make a clean break of toxic relationships. I've got a toxic relationship with Racebook, and it's time for it to come to an end. And so for me, this is my wake-up call, because I didn't have the courage to leave and just grow in other spaces akin to how I've grown over there. Now God has given me a wake-up call and has removed it from me. So from henceforth, I'm shutting down my lives over in Racebook. You'll have to spread the word and let people know they need to like, share, subscribe to YouTube, and I'll tell you when the Patreon is ready for you to subscribe over there as well. So with that said, family, I've wasted enough time on that because I didn't get an opportunity to go live at noon for your midday wake-up call. As the world of ADOX turns, that show couldn't go because I was in court. I had a trial that carried over into the afternoon, plus some other cases I had to manage around that continuance. So I just had to move that to the 7 o'clock window. Hopefully some of you will come over and join me after this segment on the ADOX. As the world of ADOX turns, it's going to be your evening wake-up call, but it's labeled the midday report. All right, so let's jump right into it, family. Let's jump right into the highlights, and we'll clip along and get you out of here so I can get set up for the 7 p.m. show. We may go a little over. We'll see. So highlights from today. Oh, my gosh. It was a mess. The defense called its second expert witness today. Defense did their best. Dr. David Fowler, a former pathologist who retired as the chief medical examiner for the state of Maryland in 2019, testified that Floyd died after experiencing a sudden cardiac arrest. He was the only witness of the day. The defense is expected to finish presenting its case this week, with closing arguments slated for Monday. So let's get into it, family. I think, the prosecution did as great a job as they could under the circumstances. You guys have got to understand something. Now, this is very different than the work I do as a litigator in workers' comp, okay? I negotiate and litigate on behalf of the doctors who treat the injured workers here in Los Angeles. Well, in the state of California, okay, but predominantly SoCal is my territory. And so, you've got to be prepared with defense to throw up any and everything. Like today, many of my exhibits were objected to by defense on one of my trials. And it was aggravating because, see, it's their job to keep the bag. It's my job to get the bag, right? So, I submit all my evidence, and then we only have a judge. We don't have a jury, okay? But know that you've got to breathe. I mean, you might even have to tune out when defense gets to speaking. It's very difficult for me to hear defense working like they're paid to do, to make Mr. Floyd's execution his fault. Okay, that's very difficult to listen to. But I digress. So I want you guys to tune out when it becomes too much by defense, who is paid to get Chauvin off. So with that said, let me get to reading here. We have a lot to cover. As usual, I'm going to tell you the way I see it in between. Maurice Hall, man with Floyd on the day of his fatal arrest, pleads the fifth. Okay. So the man who was with Mr. Floyd on the day of his fatal arrest invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege today when asked if he would testify. Hall was in the passenger seat of the car on the day of Floyd's fatal encounter with police. The defense has sought to call him as a witness. He appeared in person in the courtroom today. His attorney argued he could not answer any questions without incriminating himself because drugs were found in the car that day. Hall's lawyer also said whether or not Chauvin is convicted, Hall would still be implicated in drug-related charges if he were to testify. The judge spoke directly to Hall about his intention to plead the fifth, noting he could disregard his attorney's advice. He bet not. Hall told the judge he is fearful of additional charges, and the judge ultimately said he found the argument of Hall's counsel to be persuasive. Family, if you're ever put in this situation, never, ever, ever fall on the sword of your Fifth Amendment rights. That is constitutional. They cannot make you testify, especially if it's going to incriminate you. So please don't ever surrender that for nothing. Okay? Next, Judge Cahill denies defense motion for acquittal. Oh, the defense asked the judge today for a judgment of acquittal, arguing the prosecution has failed to present sufficient evidence to establish two of the principal issues in the case. Attorney Nelson said the state had not provided sufficient evidence when it came to use of force and whether the use of force was reasonable. He added that the prosecution had not proven Mr. Floyd's cause of death beyond a reasonable doubt. Ooh, they are trying it, family. Oh my God, do you see what they're doing? They're setting up reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors to at least convince one that the prosecution has not proven their case. All they need is one to say not guilty. He will be acquitted. Quote, the state has essentially introduced doubt in the context of providing multiple opinions from multiple witnesses, all of which seem to contradict each other, Nelson said. Prosecutor Steve Schleicher countered Nelson's argument, saying the issue was not whether there were minor inconsistencies in what witnesses had said, but whether taken as a whole, the state has proven its case in terms of the force analysis. Quote, there's no question that the witnesses who have testified all opine that the defendant's force was objectively unreasonable, he said. The state has introduced evidence that, if believed by a reasonable jury, clearly established that the defendant's conduct was a causal factor in Floyd's death, he added. Hennepin County District Judge Peter Cahill denied the motion for a judgment of acquittal today, saying the jury could give its greatest weight to the witnesses who established that the use of force was unreasonable. Fire, family. Fire. It's getting kind of hectic. Chauvin's defense called Dr. David Fowler, a former chief medical examiner for the state of Maryland, to testify as an expert witness. Let me make sure y'all can still hear me and see me. Hi, family. Thank you for staying with me on the live. Okay, I just want to make sure y'all could hear and see just fine. So let me go back. Okay. Derek Chauvin's defense has called Dr. David Fowler. Fowler handled a case similar to Floyd's in Maryland in 2018. While he was chief medical examiner of Maryland, Fowler classified the death of a 19-year-old black man, Anton Black, who died in police custody on September 28th, as an accident, the Baltimore Sun reported. No one was charged. Black's family sued Fowler, two police officers, two police chiefs, and others in a federal lawsuit in December, alleging that Fowler covered up and obscured police responsibility for Black's death. Black died after three white officers and a civilian pinned him for more than 5 minutes as they handcuffed him and shackled his legs, according to the lawsuit. He was in the midst of a mental health crisis, his family said. One of the officers, the lawsuit says, had a documented history of violence and excessive force against Black residents. Me speaking, as does Chauvin. As does Chauvin, family. Fowler conducted an autopsy and concluded there was no evidence the restraint was a direct cause of Black's death. The autopsy and body camera video were not released until Maryland Governor Larry Hogan personally intervened, the lawsuit says. Quote, even after Anton was handcuffed, the officers ignored the danger they were causing and kept Anton in a prone restraint for approximately 6 minutes as he struggled to breathe, lost consciousness, and suffered cardiac arrest. The lawsuit alleges. Me speaking. Now, Fowler said today that all it takes is 4 minutes. And yet, in this case, the brother had been restrained in a prone position for approximately 6 minutes, and he got the race soldiers off with his testimony, hence why the family is suing him. Fowler was chief medical examiner of Maryland for 17 years, according to his LinkedIn profile. He retired in 2019. He has testified in other high-profile police use of force cases and is now a member of a consulting firm. Yeah, that's what they do. They get each other off. But the family is leaning in. Good for them with the lawsuit. Next. With Dr. David Fowler on the stand, the defense introduced evidence today about open-air carbon monoxide poisoning, suggesting car exhaust could have played a role in Floyd's death. Honey, they are blaming it on the rain. They're blaming it on the bystanders. They're blaming it on Mr. Floyd's underlying health conditions, which he was clearly living with before the knee on the neck for 9.5 minutes. They're blaming it on, the fact that they needed the paramedics to come and resuscitate him and check on his pulse and thing of this nature when they're trained to do so. Now they're blaming it on open air carbon monoxide poisoning. They have no case. They're the ones that have no case. They're the ones that the prosecution should tell them to acquit. You don't have a case. Back to the text. When Floyd was pinned to the ground by Mr. Chauvin, Derek Chauvin, I won't even refer to him as Mr. His head was close to the exhaust pipe of the responding squad car. Dr. Fowler said evidence suggests the car was still running, and that could have worsened the already existing symptoms the defense is arguing led to Floyd's death. Me speaking. He's saying the car was running when he wasn't there. He's talking about some type of fluid dripping from the pipe. And for me, where the prosecution dropped the ball was not challenging that fluids leak from pipes in the off position too. That is the question he should have asked on cross and failed to do so. That was a major miss. You guys know it when you're having different leaks going on with your car, that even while it's parked, the fluids will continue to leak, correct? He missed a huge window on the cross exam of Dr. Fowler by not addressing that. Even while the cars are off, they can drip liquid fluids. Okay? When Floyd was pinned to the ground by Mr. Chauvin, his head was, okay, let me jump. Fowler said he did not see evidence Floyd's blood was tested for carbon monoxide, meaning most of this argument is based on speculation. Fowler said Floyd ultimately died from heart issues that could have been made worse by drug use and stress. He's failing to give the prosecutors what they need on cross, which is he was executed by the race soldiers, Chauvin's knee on his neck for 9.5 minutes, refusing to do that. But he's working for defense. He's their expert witness. Continuing as an expert witness for Chauvin's defense, Fowler argued that hypoxia, a potentially deadly deficiency of oxygen in bodily tissues that can be caused by strangulation, was not to blame for George Floyd's death, for reasons including a lack of bruising on his back in his autopsy report and a rate of breathing that did not apparently increase. Mr. Floyd was coherent and understandable until shortly before there was a sudden cessation of his movement, Fowler said, adding that if Floyd were experiencing hypoxia, quote, I would expect him to become disoriented, confused, incoherent. I would expect some of these symptoms to be somewhat apparent. Quote, he goes from pretty much fully functioning and coherent to unconscious very rapidly, Fowler continued, telling the defense attorney that he believed Floyd died of a sudden cardiac event and noted certain drugs in his system that put Floyd at risk of death from the position. That put Mr. Floyd at risk of death from the position of being in the prone position with knees in his back, shoulders, and neck is how he died. If there's a sudden cardiac arrest, which, as you know, the prosecutor's witnesses did not say that this was a sudden cardiac arrest, that his heart was in good condition, pretty much, save some enlargement issues. In other words, would Mr. Floyd still be living but for the knees on his back, shoulder, and neck? This man is trying to get around saying that. Quote, multiple entities all working together and adding together, Fowler said, mentioning multiple drugs in Floyd's toxicology report and not explicitly mentioning Chauvin's knee. Fowler said he would have ruled Floyd's cause of death as undetermined and not homicide, as the Hennepin County medical examiner did. The prosecution has argued that Floyd's death naturally was caused by asphyxia or insufficient oxygen from Chauvin kneeling on his neck. During cross-examination of defense expert witness Dr. David Fowler, prosecuting attorney Jerry Blackwell was able to get the former Maryland medical examiner to walk back some of his earlier testimony that raised questions about the cause of George Floyd's death. Mr. Blackwell was fierce. Fowler, this was the part I came in on because I was at my own trial in the morning and the afternoon. Fowler conceded multiple points, including that a lack of bruising and other injuries do not prove that Floyd did not die of asphyxia and that the weight of Chauvin's gear was not factored into his calculation of the force applied to Floyd's neck. Me speaking. Chauvin is 140 pounds. His equipment was an additional 30 pounds, making 170 pounds on Mr. Floyd's neck. But that matters not. It's immaterial. 140 pounds, 170 pounds, a knee on anyone's neck. For what one of the expert witnesses for prosecution said, for longer than 10 seconds, cutting off your airway can cause brain damage and kill you. So this is immaterial, but I love the way Mr. Blackwell handled it on cross. Blackwell also managed to make a dent in Fowler's testimony that carbon monoxide was a factor in Floyd's death. The defense witness acknowledged that he did not know for certain that Minneapolis Police Squad car 320 was turned on during Floyd's restraint on the street and that he had not measured emissions made by the vehicle while idling. Fowler also conceded the squad car 320 may have been a hybrid. Okay? On some tough questions that seemed to call into question earlier testimony, Fowler pushed back and hedged, allowing Blackwell to keep peppering in. It's a yes or no question. Me speaking, Fowler was trying to go over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go to give an explanation when he was not He was trying to avoid answering the questions directly, family. Toward the end of cross-examination, Blackwell asked Fowler whether it is true that 4 minutes of pressure to the back of the neck can cause irreversible brain damage because the brain may be starved of oxygen. Fowler hedged again, allowing Blackwell to interrupt. Dr. Fowler, my question was it true? Blackwell restated the question, to which Fowler responded, correct. It takes 4 minutes of no oxygen supplied to the brain to cause irreversible brain damage. Blackwell didn't come to play. Okay, so they will continue this case on Thursday after just calling one witness today. They recessed following extensive direct testimony from and cross-examination of defense expert witness Dr. David Fowler, a retired forensic pathologist who was the chief medical office examiner for the state of Maryland for 17 years. So the trial will resume tomorrow at 9:15 a.m. local time. So that's that. Now, let's talk about the officer in Mr. Dante Wright shooting. She's going to be charged with second-degree manslaughter. Praise God for that. Praise God for that. It makes no sense that it takes all this to prove that these race soldiers were responsible for executing our very own. The police officer who fired on Mr. Dante Wright during a traffic stop in Brooklyn Center on Sunday, killing the 20-year-old, will reportedly be charged with second-degree manslaughter. Washington County Attorney Pete Orput confirmed the charge against former Officer Kim Potter, who resigned a day earlier, to the New York Times in an emailed statement today, on Wednesday. Isn't today Wednesday? The news follows days of demonstrations in the city, as well as the resignation of Thomas Gannon, Brooklyn Center's former police chief, me speaking, and I have no confidence in who replaced him. In a town hall with the activists, he seems like a straight-up white inferior race soldier, just replacing one race soldier behind another one. That appears to be what's happening over at the Brooklyn City Police Department. If convicted, Potter will face a sentence of up to 10 years in prison and a fine up to $20,000 under state law. She was arrested this morning local time and detained at the Hennepin County Jail, according to a statement from the state's Department of Public Safety. Her charge comes amid the ongoing trial of Derek Chauvin, a former Minneapolis police officer. We already know. I'm jumping. Potter, a 26-year veteran of the Brooklyn Center Police Force, resigned Tuesday. That's what I was thinking. She didn't resign this morning. She resigned Tuesday before they got a chance to fire her, per the mayor, who recommended that she be terminated. She's a 26-year veteran. She resigned Tuesday after the department's now former chief Gannon told reporters at a news conference that she mistakenly believed she had drawn her stun gun when she opened fire on Wright. Once again, you got 26 years on the force. You don't know that you are firing a gun. And furthermore, why are tasers and guns involved in a simple traffic violation, of which was expired tags in the middle of a pandemic, when no one can get their tags renewed in a timely manner given the pandemic? These type of violations shouldn't even matter in the pandemic. He should have never been pulled over for that. And so now you want to tase a young man and execute him? Police have said that Wright was pulled over due to an expired registration and claims that he had an object hanging from his rearview mirror. Those were air fresheners. Potter's body camera footage. Why should air fresheners and expired tag result in the execution of one of our very own? He was racially profiled, and that was first-degree murder. I don't care what they're charging her with. She intentionally executed that young man while screaming, taser, taser, taser. after 26 years on the force. Miss me with it. Potter's body camera footage released on Monday showed her assisting another officer as they attempt to arrest Wright for an outstanding warrant. Those warrants were for moving violations that he had already arranged a payment plan for, around $346. Because this is the way they keep us in a cycle of prison, the not so new slavery, and in a cycle of harassment and execution by state sanction, government sanction. They now ticket you for every little thing. And it's more like debtor's prison from back in the Gap, when you refused to do the sharecropping till you died with no real money, and then threw you into debtor's, prison. Yeah, that's what's happening to us now all over the country. They'll just ticket you to death. By the time they pull you over, you owe money, got warrants for your arrest because of your outstanding tickets that you can't afford to pay. And why can't you afford to pay those? I'm glad you asked. You're on the bottom, highest unemployment, highest underemployed, with an over $100 trillion egregious racial wealth gap that's gotten even larger since the pandemic. So you're set up to be set up, to be executed and thrown in jail. Okay. Before Wright jumps back into his car, Potter appears to shout, "Tase him." Hold on, it jumped.
Your customers are expecting.
Hold on 1 second, guys. Okay, you can't hear that. Hold on 1 second. They want to try to play the video from the article I'm reading. This is what happens when you don't subscribe to every news source that you read from. They'll interrupt you with all kinds of ads. That's why I don't even show them anymore. Bras and all kind of carrying on. Child, please. Amazon, everybody's advertising when I'm sharing. So I'm just reading from the text and managing when they want to disrupt my flow. So let's go back to where I just left off. Potter appears to shout, "Tase him," before pulling out her gun and pointing it at him. After Wright drives away, the officer can be heard saying, "I just shot him." The killing has led to calls from leaders and activists for change in policing. Oh, here we got to hear from Obama, who endorsed Blue Lives Matter. He signed an EO for Blue Lives Matter and neglected us during his tenure, always having something to say when we wish he would just go somewhere and disappear with his $70 million having ass and just go play with his rich billionaire buddies and leave us alone to fix his foolishness on every affront where our people are concerned. He called on the U.S. to reimagine policing and public safety after the incident. We don't need to hear from Biden and Kamala and Obama with their tweets. We need executive orders to decimate qualified immunity, to decimate private prisons, to pass the anti-lynch bill into law, and to make domestic terrorists of the KKK, the neo-Nazis, and the skinheads. That's what we need. The rest of this bullshit, keep all of it. Miss me with it, okay? So next, I want to go to Army officer who sues Virginia police over violent traffic stop. Let me share this video with you guys. Hold on, family. Give me a second. Of course, it wants to add me to death when I've already paid for ad-free, but here we go. Hold on. I'm sharing the screen now.
What happened next was caught on camera. Themselves in the national spotlight tonight. Police in the small town of Windsor, Virginia, find themselves in the national spotlight tonight. They're being sued by an Army officer who was Black and Latino after a traffic stop last December. What happened next was caught on camera. CBS's Christina Ruffini has more.
Get out! Get out the car! Get out now!
I have not committed any crimes.
In body camera and cell phone video, Army Second Lieutenant Karen Nazario, still in his uniform, keeps his hands visible out the window of his new car, while two Windsor police officers, guns drawn, order him to get out.
I'm honestly afraid to get out.
Yeah, dude, you should be. Get out! Get out!
Nazario repeatedly asks why he's been pulled over. One of the two officers pepper sprays and kicks him.
Why am I being treated like this? Why? You're not cooperating. Get on the ground.
He's then handcuffed while they search his car.
Was he afraid if he took his hands out of view, something really bad would happen?
Yes. So unbuckled his seatbelt to do anything. Any misstep, he was afraid that they were going to kill him.
Attorney Jonathan Arthur is representing Nazario in a lawsuit filed earlier this month against the two officers. The incident report says Nazario was pulled over for not having tags displayed on his SUV. But the temporary dealer plate is visible in the officer's body cam video. Nazario was released without charge.
What prompted him to file is the need to stop this conduct, the need to hold these two officers accountable and make sure they cannot do it again.
The Windsor Police Department did not respond to CBS News for comment. Christina Ruffini, CBS News, Washington.
Okay, family, so let me stop sharing that. And I want to read to you this article. Hold on one second. Because he's doing the right thing. He's suing them now. Police, okay, so I'm not going to read what he said. I want to read about him. I want to read about the lawsuit. Just a second. Hold on, family. Okay, U.S. police officer accused of assaulting Black Army officer fired. Okay, now there were two officers. The Hispanic officer was fired, but the white one was not. Why not? One of two Virginia police officers accused of assaulting a U.S. Army Lieutenant Caron Nazario by pointing their guns and pepper spraying him during a traffic stop has been fired, according to an official statement. Officer Joe Gutierrez was terminated from his employment after an investigation determined he did not follow policies set by the police department, the town of Windsor, Virginia said in a statement on Sunday. The statement did not detail any punishments for the other officer involved in the incident, Daniel Crocker. So Daniel Crocker doesn't get arrested. But the Hispanic officer gets arrested. It added that disciplinary action and department-wide requirements for additional training were implemented after the incident. They don't need training. This is not a training issue. As we clearly see them take away mass murderers, mass shooters alive. They get taken alive. There's no training needed here. You need to stop hiring the KKK, the neo-Nazis, and the skinheads. As of FBI 2016 investigative report shared. You're hiring them because you claim to not hire them. It violates their First Amendment rights to be associated with domestic terrorist groups, because that's what they are, whether you call them that or not. You care more about their First Amendment right to be hired on the police force, and then you place them in our communities so that they can continue to execute us with immunity. There's no training needed. This is the type of stuff that Biden could do an executive order to stop. Simply stop hiring people that are associated with these hate groups. 10-year investigation proved that they've infiltrated the police force all through the country. Not even infiltrated, they've been hired. Our tax dollars pay for the domestic terrorists to come to our neighborhoods to execute our people. So until that stops, this does not stop, family. I'll be able to read your comments in just a moment. It added that the firing comes after Nazario filed a lawsuit against the two police officers in federal court over what court papers say was a violent traffic stop on December 5th, 2020. We're just now seeing it. We're in April, where officers pointed their guns, knocked him to the ground, pepper sprayed him, and threatened to murder him. That's what they did. Nazario, who is Latino and Black, alleged Gutierrez and Crocker violated his constitutional rights with his lawsuit, including assault, illegal search, and illegal detention. Early on Sunday, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam said he was directing the Virginia State Police to conduct an independent investigation into the case. The town of Windsor joined the governor in calling for an investigation of the incident by the Virginia police and a full review of the actions of the two police officers. The two sides in the case had disputed what happened during the incident, but it's on camera. If this brother had not pulled into a well-lit gas station, family, we'd be burying him. He'd been buried. They would have executed him. He was so smart to pull into a well-lit gas station in case these Mickey Fickies turned off their body cameras. The cameras at the gas station captured it too. Back to the text. At the time, Nazario was coming from his duty station and going home, lawyer Jonathan Arthur told the Associated Press on Friday. Quote, graduated from Virginia State University. He was commissioned out of their ROTC program. He's an officer in the United States Armed Forces, Arthur said. These guys decide to do this to him. Crocker radioed he was attempting to stop a vehicle with no rear license plate and tinted windows. He said the driver was eluding police and he considered it a high-risk traffic stop, according to a report he submitted afterwards, which was included in the court filing. Arthur said Nazario explained at the time that he wasn't trying to elude the officer, but was trying to stop in a well-lit area for officer safety and out of respect for the officers. But truthfully, he feared for his life. That's what he should have said. Gutierrez was driving by when he heard Crocker's call, saw him attempting to stop the SUV, and decided to join the traffic stop. Gutierrez acknowledged that Nazario's decision to drive to a lighted area happens to him a lot, and 80% of the time it's a minority, Arthur said, quoting the officer. The lawsuit says by the time the two officers reached Nazario's SUV, the license plate was visible in the rear. Let me go back. Okay, Gutierrez acknowledged that Nazario's decision to drive to a lighted area happens to him a lot, and 80% of the time it's a minority, Arthur said, quoting the officer. Do you blame the minorities for pulling into lighted areas the way they're executing us with impunity? Nazario drove his SUV to a well-lit gas station where, according to the lawsuit, the two officers got out and immediately drew their guns and pointed them at Nazario after they got out of their cars. The officers then attempted to pull Nazario out of the vehicle while he continued to keep his hands in the air. Gutierrez then stepped back and pepper sprayed Nazario multiple times as officers yelled for him to get out of the car. Why? Who do you know gets pulled over for a traffic stop and gets asked to come out of the vehicle? I don't know of anybody being stopped. I've never been asked to get out of a vehicle when I've been pulled over for a moving traffic violation. Ever. Okay, family. So let's, prayerfully he will be very successful in his lawsuit against these race soldiers that pulled him over. I'm coming over to hear what you guys have to say. It's a small house tonight because, like I mentioned earlier, ScrewTube has actually, not ScrewTube, excuse me, Racebook has actually shut me down again without explanation. So please like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications because it's going to be used as an opportunity to wean myself away from Racebook and be solely on YouTube, and Patreon is coming as well. I'm done fooling with their censorship of my First Amendment right. Okay, I'm done with that part. So let's see what my co-hosts have to say about it. Thank you, YVOC Info. Hi, Angela. Looking radiant. Thank you so much for your kind words. Peace and blessing, Marky Mark. Can't wait to hear your perspective on this. Will you be speaking on the judiciary markup session as well? Absolutely. That's going to come tomorrow on tomorrow's segment of As the World of ADOX Turns, Marky Mark, your midday wake-up call. So please be sure to tune into YouTube since Racebook has shut that show down. I don't know how long I'm going to be shut down, but I'm using it as an opportunity to leave it all together. Brian says, I read some of your comments already. In the brief segment I saw, Blackwell did a great job of dismantling Fowler's angle on a carbon monoxide poisoning, pointing out that was not previously expressed as a cause or a contributing factor. He sure did, Brian. Thank you for your words here and for being one of my staunchest co-hosts and keyboard warriors here at the Reparations Perspective. Always having something rich to add. I appreciate you. Agreed. Interactions with Blacks at these traffic stops always seem to take a bizarre turn into violence. Yep. Philando Castile stopped and killed in Minnesota. They're becoming famous for it. George Floyd choked to death in Minnesota. Dante Wright stopped and killed in Minnesota. You know it. On Virginia incident, media is trying to spin this as a Black and Latino discrimination issue when both the race soldier and the lieutenant were Latino. Absolutely. Clearly, of course, they're going to try to pivot. Now it's going to be Hispanic Lives Matter. Anything to pivot from Black Life Mattering. And as I posted in Racebook before I was shut down, isn't it mighty ironic that you don't hear people up in an upheaval over Asian Lives Matter? You don't hear them saying all lives matter when folks are resounding Asian Lives Matter. It's only reserved when we scream for Black life to matter. Do they come up with all lives matter, blue lives matter, gay lives matter, purple lives matter? Have you noticed that? Clearly, Gutierrez identifies as a white superior. Even though he's brown like us, most of them identify as white. Yes, they do. Because the government allows Hispanics to identify as white. The only people that can't identify as white are those ADOCs who can't afford to identify as white. And even when you've got money, hello, Henry Louis Gates, they can still accost you right on your property in their neighborhoods. Brian says, I was surprised they had just started speaking on HR 40 at around 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Really? I thought it was earlier. That's wild to me. When I tuned in to what was supposed to be the HR 40 hearings, they were talking about the migrant children. That was so upsetting and unnerving. I didn't know that they didn't even start talking about HR 40 until 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I thought it was going to be an exclusive hearing for our HR 40. So whack on so many levels. Continue to lean in on the Fix HR 40 campaign, family. I'm going to share the link here so you can get involved. We're still putting pressure to get those edits in because I don't know what those edits generated after, during the hearing today. I don't know if any of our edits got in, even though we've been campaigning for them to. We did, we emailed, we tweeted, we Instagram, we Facebook, we made phone calls. We did it all, family. And yet and still, I'm not sure because I've not seen the HR 40 hearings at all. I will try to find them and be able to report on it tomorrow as a part of my As the World of ADOX Turns series. During the HR 40 talks, one dude started talking about Mexican discrimination. Wasn't that Republican? Was that Black Republican? I can't even think of his name off the top of my head. But let me help you understand, family. When I placed my calls, they got an earful. I wasn't just calling to tell them to put our edits on their hearing floor. I told them all about themselves. I let them know how dare they even remotely consider a cashless reparations for the very descendants of the ancestors who built all the wealth all of them eat from through heinous chattel slave labor. They built the wealth they eat from with their lives. How dare you even fix your mouth to even suggest that our reparations not be in the trillions over multi-generations. So I got mostly voicemails, and even when I emailed them, it was the same thing. How dare you? It's offensive to think that you're going to sit up here and give more programs like you did with affirmative action, give with the left and take away with the right. Run us our trillions directly into our accounts, directly into our bank accounts, the same way you do the pandemic, the money that you miraculously come up with, when it's time to enrich yourself and everyone else but ADOX. So miss me with it. You got the money to do reparations. You just don't have the will or the desire. So one of my comrades texted me, and this is why, let me see what time she texted me, family, about the vote for the HR 40. Now, unless she's got it wrong, I got a text here I got to scroll, family. Give me a second. They're voting for the HR 40. Who? Congress. I'm listening to it right now on Clubhouse. Okay, so there were 21 ayes and 15 noes. Now, this was at 12:13 Pacific Standard Time, which is around 3:15 Eastern Standard Time. So I'm not sure how they voted, but didn't start at 5, Brian. You might have to help me with that. Not Owens, although he spoke, and I got a headache. It was some gentleman, Korea, I believe. That sounds like a Hispanic last name. Anyway, family, it's just, pandering. Continue to lean in on the Fix HR 40 campaign, all of our ADOX and allies. With that said, family, I'm going to jump from here. Hope to see you over in 2 minutes back here on YouTube on the As the World of ADOX Turn episode. It's now your evening wake-up call. Know that I love you black and strong if I don't see you over there, fam. Peace. 2 minutes, I'm going back live. Thank you.